you're listening to Big Blend Radio's Lost Angel Travel Adventures show with Linda Ballou, travel writer and author, and your host, Lisa Smith. Travel writer, author, and novelist Linda Ballou back to the show. She's joining us to talk about the third book in her Lost Angel travel series. It is called Lost Angel Unleashed. We actually met her the very first time on our show. I don't know how many years ago, but it was a Lost Angel in Paradise from LA to the Lost Coast of California. That was the second book. But she's also written Lost Angel Walkabout, One Traveler's Trails, One Traveler's Tales. That was the very first one. But she's also written novels, and we could just sit here and I could just keep listing books. But welcome back, Linda. How are you?
Hi, Lisa. I'm excited. It's always great to see you.
You too. And so this is the third one. And, we've talked about your novels as well over the years. During the pandemic, you got another novel out there and became an expert of a wonderful historic woman of Colorado. And I think it's quite interesting because reading all your novels, Lost Angel, all those travel books too, I think you bring this women's perspective to travel, to adventure, to living life to the fullest that gets lost. Oh, did I use the word lost? But it gets lost in the shuffle of life, that we actually need to acknowledge that women, we can be badass and still be, girls.
That's right. And you don't have to become a man. You don't have to be an imitation man. You can be a genuine woman.
Look, you're wearing pink or salmon,
That's
should I
right.
say today?
Yes, I'm definitely. Spring is blue. We have a glorious spring here. It's absolutely fabulous with all the flowers. But that picture of me in the corner is me in Australia. And that's why I chose it for the cover of Lost Angel Unleashed, because I have been able to really get out there, and really explore the world. And it's been fantastic. And this book is, the first part of the book is a travel memoir. It's stories that didn't get told, maybe because they were a little too personal, or maybe a family member was still alive and I didn't want to, hurt them, sort of thing, So the first section of the book is Thanks for the Memories. And then the second section of the book is Destinations to Die For. And certainly Australia was one of those. I mean, I really felt privileged to be there. That's in the outback. And I did a huge trip all over Australia. I even got to Tasmania, which most people don't get to. But I did. And so I wanted to share my my most fantastic and memorable destinations.
I remember when you went to Australia and Tasmania. We've got your articles up on that too.
Right.
And everyone, you can read Linda's articles on Blend Radio and TV.com and nationalparktraveling.com. And you'd gone, there was the fires going on. And then right when you got home, like the pandemic happened.
Well, that's exactly right. I almost didn't get home because
I know. Because we needed you home, and we were even in California. We're like, Linda, get your butt back.
Really, my flight, I was scheduled to go a day later, but it started raining when I was in the Sydney airport, and I was supposed to go to the Blue Mountains, and I cut my trip short because I was tired. I had been on the road for a while and the weather wasn't great. And so I went, you know what, I'm going home. Thank God I did, because the next day, practically, when I got home, Australia was shut down. Nobody was going in or out of there. I'd still be in Australia, but when I got home to LA, I looked down in the downtown area of Los Angeles, and there wasn't a human on the street, Wow. It just, the whole world had shut down, and I just like, oh my God, so it clipped my wings, my travel wings, for almost, I traveled last year into Colorado, but I haven't done any international travel since the pandemic.
Well, and you went to Oregon. You did Colorado.
Oh, I did. During the pandemic, I rafted the Rogue River, thank God, Momentum River. expeditions hosted me on that trip because, oh, it was so much needed. I needed to be outdoors. I'm an outdoor person, and I need to be in nature. I need to every once in a while be totally immersed in nature and pull the plug on all of it.
Mm.
The
I
internet.
think we all, and I mean, yeah, I think we learned that during the pandemic. And I think, that's good timing for this book to come out too, because travel comes in all shapes and forms. And the very first story, it's like, that's like a kid being dropped, Nancy as a kid, when we were reading that, both her and I, and your very first story kind of reminded her of as a kid, like her dad would just throw kids off the pier and learn to swim in California. And it was very similar to that shock value of like, you're
Yeah.
traveling whether you like it or not, but wow, you took flight from your very first travel. You bad girl.
Well, actually, yeah, I wanted to tell that story.
Oh,
That was one of
wow.
the reasons why I call it Unleashed, because it is a personal story, and I do talk about racism, which
Mhm,
is a little touchy subject. But it was part of my growing up, that I
mhm,
had to deal with racism. And, and my father was, a strict disciplinarian. And so he put me on a flight to get out of Haines, Alaska, because I was involved with a young man who was an Indian boy. So, I mean, maybe today that wouldn't be so difficult, but at that time it was verboten, and it was very hard for me. So I was forced to get on this mail plane in the middle of the winter. And my first flight was this, stomach dropping flight over in a storm over the Lynn Canal in a float plane. And fortunately, the pilot invited me to come up front and sit with him, and got my mind off the fact that I was impending doom. I was
yeah.
like scared to death.
uh,
So he put my mind on becoming an ace pilot. So it was like really it was fun in a way, it was exciting in a way, because like Isabella Bird, the woman that I wrote about, I did an article about, and they said Isabella Bird is an adventure junkie. And I realized
mhm,
I'm an adventure junkie. And it's
yeah.
because so young, in the very beginning, I was taken through a situation that as an adult, maybe I would have been more traumatized. But as a young person, it was an adventure. I got into the adventure of it.
I
And
think
I've
that's
been
huge. That's a
I've been
huge
in
thing
the
because
adventure of it ever since, my whole life.
uh,
What's the next adventure?
well, that's the thing, because it's a negative experience. And
Right.
obviously in those era, in that era, that's what Nancy and I were talking about this with your book and your story. And she says, well, my parents were exactly the same in that era. People were
Really?
just not, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And what's great is that both of you, no matter how your parents felt at that time, and that was a hand-me-down and a hand-me-down, but both of you living separate lives, right? And but in that same kind of era, both didn't succumb to the racist part of it,
Well, a lot of
which
things
was
have
amazing.
changed. A lot of
Yeah.
things have changed in the 60s. Okay, the other thing that was really happening was women's, challenging traditional roles for women. And I was very much into that. I wasn't burning my bra, but I was thinking about it. I was thinking about, gee, do I really want to get married? Gee, do I really want to have children? I mean, gee, is that really what I want to do? And the answer was no.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean, I turned out to be a rebel in many, many ways, but it was the times where a change in the 60s.
Mhm,
And so one of the things I did when I was 28 was I dropped out of society and I landed on the North Shore of Kauai for 1 year. And in that
mhm,
year, I really did a lot of thinking about my career. I had a degree in English literature. Was I going to be a teacher? Which is about all you can do with that, you know.
right.
Was I going to be a writer? Was I good enough to make a living at it?
Mm,
Or, and was I going to get married? And was I going to have children? These were the burning questions. And I found my balance there
Mm.
in that year, and sort of figured out who I was and what was most important to me. And I think that my mother, for instance, didn't have that opportunity. She married young, she had children, her marriage was the most important thing to her. And I think a lot of women in her generation are the same way.
But
So,
she got to travel with you a little bit, right? I
well,
remember that.
my
Yeah.
mother was, but turns out as my mother got old, especially up in Alaska, she
Mm.
was an adventure junkie too. I mean, I don't, I have to say, I take an awful lot. When I would go home, she always had an adventure lined up for me, you know, whether it was a flight over the glacier fields one time,
Oh,
or
wow.
yeah, and one time, in fact, I think I wrote that story there. Lost Angel Gets Cold Wings.
Hmm.
It was a scary flight. And then one time I came home and she had lined up a safari on ATV vehicles that were going up to the top of this mountain for a halibut feed. I mean, and I drove with her. She drove me. We went to the Caribbean together, and we sailed through the Caribbean together when she was 75. You know, and of course she
Mm.
rafted the Tachincini River before
That's
I
right.
did. And I looked at Mom and I said, "Oh, you know, Mom can do it. I can do it. Hey, you know." But it was really a big deal. I mean, it was really a very big adventure, and we were just both really lucky that we had good weather, because weather out there in the wilderness of Alaska is the whole story. If you have,
Oh, well,
if it's
Nancy and I just went through weather of North Wisconsin. We arrived, and in an hour we got shut in for 3
oh,
days. There is
well,
no,
there you go.
you're in. And then I went out thinking I'm going to feed the birds, and then my butt hit ice. Like I learned that you can
You
slide on
slip on
ice.
the ice.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I
and the
learned that when
dogs are looking at me. The dogs are all standing looking at me and going, "You slid on my pee, ha ha." Yes, you know what I
when
mean?
I
It,
first came to Alaska when I was 13, and you know, I had never seen snow or ice. And I was standing in front of the Moosehorn Cafe, which is where all the kids hung out. And I was holding my boyfriend's hand and talking to him. And all of a sudden, I slipped on the ice and slid right under his. I mean, and I would fall 2 or 3 times on the way to the post office. I mean, I was really a fish out of water. But you know, but being in Alaska was extremely valuable for me, because in the end, my parting thought in my book, Lost Angel Unleashed, is that nature can be our salvation. And
hmm.
so in my life, through all of whatever trials and tribulations I've experienced, everyone has their share. I have found that I find substance and solace in nature. And that's what I got in Alaska, was connected to the natural world. And that has carried through with me for my entire life. And as a writer, one of the things you do is you learn about yourself, you know? So I see
Hmm.
a theme in all of my work, of everything that I've ever written, my novels, all my travel stories, everything. Like my characters find sustenance and solace in nature. And
Hmm.
that's, that's what I believe. And that's what I've lived. And so that's,
I think your background of Alaska is interesting too, because and you've traveled all over the world. I mean, your book goes from Argentina to,
right.
Botswana, all these places, right? And it's there's something. It is nature, yet nature is brutal. Nature
Oh,
is
yeah.
beautiful. It's the
Right.
extreme. It's the
Right.
extreme, right? And it's
Right.
always changing. And that's what people have fear about, is that. But at the same time, once you embrace it and understand that you are actually part of nature, that's something important. So I really appreciate that you write about it, especially from a woman's perspective. The Alaska side of it, Alaska is very male from what we've experienced from
Yeah.
the other side, very
Right.
male
My
kind of. Jewel,
right.
Jewel, the singer, Jewel comes from Alaska with boys and living out of a homestead, had to hunt for a living, all kinds of stuff. Sang the singer Jewel, and she talks about it. And she went back recently to really kind of rediscover her roots of Alaska and
Mhm.
shared with people how hard it is for women in Alaska and how it's so unknown what women go through in Alaska, how tough women are. And they just are like unsung heroes for the rest of, the lower 48 we haven't a darn clue. We really don't.
Well, my dad was the great white hunter, so he was like a man's man. And
Mm.
the women were in Alaska were supposed to be what glad to be. I forget the slogan, but
Yeah.
it's something about. Sorry, I forget how the slogan. But the fact is, my mother went along with it. Where the men are men and the women are glad of it. That's the line. Okay. So my
Yeah.
mother
Yeah.
loved my father, which unfortunately for her, took her on some very rough adventures. I mean, they went gold mining and mom came back with her face blown up 3 sizes bigger from the mosquitoes and it was harsh. It's
Oh,
harsh out there in the wilderness, right? So I was actually pretty wimpy compared to the other women, even including my mom, who she went goat hunting with my father, and I mean climbed up these very steep mountains to get to mountain goats. And she shot a trophy goat, and her goat was on the Alaska magazine and all of this. But I didn't want to do any of that stuff. I just
yeah.
wanted
Yeah.
to be in nature. So I would take these long walks, and I wouldn't carry a gun. That was another thing that my father wanted me to carry a gun, and I just refused, and that upset him. And also, I wasn't supposed to go into the woods alone. But the men were out hunting, and I wasn't into killing the animals. And so
Right.
here I was a nature nut, but I wasn't willing to carry a gun, and it was dangerous to go walking in the woods by yourself. So I would usually check with the ranger station or let someone know where I was going, or I would try to get my brother to go with me.
Mm.
But if he wasn't in the mood, which, often he wasn't, I would go. And I wanted to be alone too. There was that, the need to have
Mm.
solitude was very important. So I was a duck out of water, but in a way I was a duck in the water.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's hard. It's hard because it's not what popular society expects, right? I mean, in Africa, it's like it's the same thing too. It's like everyone have a gun, and like Nancy went, I mean, all through Africa. I mean, in the wild, I mean, she worked with Joy Adamson and Elsa the Lion, all that, nothing, no guns, nothing.
Mm,
And people are like, oh, you need to have this, but she did have a machete. But it wasn't like, I mean, to this day, we don't carry a gun, and I don't think we all do. And honestly, there's things that can be worked out without a damn gun,
I'm
you know,
anti-gun. I'm anti-gun, and without getting terribly political, but I really feel that we need gun control. I mean, I just
mm,
think, if you have a gun, you're liable to use it, and I
yeah,
don't want to
I
even
understand people
close to
adventures and
close
stuff.
to
I
the
think there's a
temptation.
place.
I
Yeah,
don't want to kill anybody.
there's a place for it, and there's a place for it, but
Yeah,
not necessary. I think ranchers and people who really do need it. I mean, I've friends
right,
who are farmers that, being out there, I'm
right.
like, I get it, but I can't kill anything. I'm not going to do that,
Well, my dad used to get a moose every September
Hmm.
in moose season, and then we would cut it up and we'd put it in the freezer, and we, ate wild game. And I mean, I understand. I
Yeah, but
understand
but that's
hunting and
actually
all
healthier
of that.
than factory farming, quite frankly. It's
Right. So I
for
mean,
the
I
animal too.
understand. I understand why the rant. I understand that. So as I say, I don't want to go too far into that
Yeah.
territory.
But
But
I
for
think
me,
yeah,
no guns.
yeah. But that's the thing about being in nature. We are all like in that cosmic circle, basically, when we travel in nature, we're all in there, whether you're a hunter or can't say naturalist because I know Linda's not going to take her clothes or nature, so I don't know what to say there. But you know what I mean? There's nature, there's conservation, and there's all these different groups of people. But the reality is nature, and when you're one with nature, you can't beat that. You cannot
Well,
beat
as
that.
Edward Abbey said, I'm not an atheist. I'm an eartheist.
I love that. I love that. You were posting that. It's at the end of your book. too, and that you talk about
Well,
that.
that's what I
Explain that
am.
for
I'm an
people.
earthiest.
Mm,
I plug into nature. I go to the beach and plug into the sand. I feel the
mm,
energy of the sun. I'm revived and uh, resuscitated. Charge my batteries, no matter how you want to say it. Anyway, I'm an earthiest.
yeah, I think, well, I think it's good that you share stories because sometimes people can't go out and do the experiences that you're having. Is that part of why you write your
Yes,
stories, your travel?
yes, and that's something that everybody, almost anyone reading my stuff, almost always says. I feel like I'm there with you. And that
That's cool.
really is the reward for me, that a lot of people, yes, they can't get out, or physically maybe, or maybe they're just too timid, or something, but they want to be out.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
they enjoy the experience. So that's one of the rewards for me in my writing, and I do encourage
I think
people to
also
get out.
budget wise, but I want to say too, some of, doing more of a natural travel thing isn't as expensive as other styles of travel too. And the rewards to me are higher,
Yeah, for
you
me
know?
it is definitely. I mean, you'll notice I've been to Europe, but I've not written anything about Europe. I mean, I'm not anti-culture or whatever. I mean, I enjoyed being in Europe and going to historical sites and churches and things like that. But I was much more in awe of Torres del Paine in Patagonia. Being
Mm,
there, that experience for me was much more exciting and fulfilling.
mm,
Although I will say the Notre Dame was pretty groovy. I mean, they were singing there the day I was there, and it was really a spiritual experience, and tears were flowing. I'm not saying I'm not, especially music. I love music. I'm really moved
mm,
by music.
mm.
But as far as destinations go, I would much rather go to like the Tetons, or, you know, uh,
Yeah.
certainly our country is filled with natural wonders. You don't have to. But the trouble with our country is the national parks are so uh, crowded.
Mm.
That's a problem. But
Depends on when you go. And now
yeah,
I think they're doing reservation systems, which I'm actually
yes,
quite
yes,
pro because
yeah,
we
I
do
am
need to
too.
be light on the land. We need to be light
I
on the land.
agree. And I think that, they have it pretty well organized. When I was in Colorado last year, I was at the Rocky Mountain National Park. And you do have to make your reservations online, and it's very organized, but that's not too tough to do, and it limits how many people are in there at one time, so that you do
Mm,
have the opportunity to have some solitude, and to be able to walk peacefully in nature.
yeah. I remember the last time when we were there, they had just opened, I think it's Trail Ridge Road, the big mountain pass,
Right, right.
and there were and I was doing the speed limit, but I also am slow because I want to see the wildlife. You're in a park. It's like driving through a national wildlife refuge. Slow down. And I had this young group of guys on my tail, like honking, trying to get around me.
Oh,
And I was like,
please.
and I,
Why
I'm
were
like,
they there?
yeah, go home,
Yeah,
know? And so when it comes to limiting the amount of people, I think it's good for the land and good for your experience when you're going somewhere,
right.
that it's
I
not
think
so
they have
overcrowded.
to do it. They have to do it. It's
Hmm.
necessary, because a lot of people are still not traveling internationally because
Hmm.
of COVID. They're afraid to, leave our country,
Hmm.
which did. But I think if you travel internationally, you just have to be a wee bit more careful than you would have been in the past. Like, for instance, I'm going to Southeast Asia, and I
Hmm.
expect that I'll be wearing a mask quite a bit of the time, because the
Hmm.
vaccine was not given there the way it
Hmm.
was in our country. So there'll be a lot of people there, I think, that are unvaccinated. But I'm not, I'm going to get out. It's time to get out.
Oh gosh, isn't it? It's like that itchy feel. But I want to go back to this too. Africa's, you know, I grew up there in the 70s and 80s and 90s and early 90s, and we'd go out to parks and it would get packed too, just locally and then international visitors. And of course, and I feel this way, like even when you go out in the coast and California coastline very well, you go on a whale watching trip and then there's regulations, but if there's a whale, everybody still starts to circle. And I just kind of go like, back off, you know, and I feel that way. So in in your stories and what you tell, I think you get out into the wilderness and on foot a lot of times. And I think that's better. Like in Africa, we'd go out, obviously hike and everything, but we'd see like a lion or something. And if you pull over, people, the first thing people do is pull over. What are they seeing? So Nancy was to always put up the map. We're looking at the map, and so they would leave us alone. And if you put the map up, everybody passes you and they don't see the lion because they're not looking like we were really well trained on animal
Right.
spotting. And so if you put the map up, people would leave, and then the animal only had to deal with us. And we would just sit and we would just leave the animal alone. But if
Yeah.
one person got it, you would have like 10 cars and jeeps
Yeah.
circling
No,
an
I
animal.
know. Yeah, like in Yellowstone one time and I was there, there was a mama bear with her cubs, and there was this huge lineup of traffic. And of course, there was one woman who got out of the car and starts walking towards the mama bear, which is about the stupidest thing you could possibly do. And it's frustrating in our national parks that people are so silly, and you see it all the time, you know.
Do you
But
with your
you
writing
know,
that people can
you can go off
can get
season, I guess. You can go off
yeah,
season and avoid a lot of that.
but do you think through your writing that you want people to appreciate and kind of understand that animals and nature are more than selfies?
Yeah, well, uh,
I'm
I
just
haven't
saying.
said that, but I certainly feel that way. That that you know, there are like every year there are people who die taking selfies at the Grand Canyon. They step off the can. They step
And here
back
it
for
is. It's
that
behind me,
perfect
everyone.
picture. They
Yep.
go off. Yeah, I mean, and
Yep.
I'm not exaggerating. This happens every year. And every year in the Rocky Mountains, somebody gets gored by an elk, getting too close and so on. I think that city people just don't have a sensitivity for the animals. I think they think it's like Disneyland or something. The
Mhm.
animals aren't real to them or something. And then in fact, they say, oh, this is like, no, like Disneyland was the first. No, the animals were there first. And then there was
Well,
Disneyland
that's
and
what I'm saying about your
movies.
books, and I'm hoping people kind of understand the ruggedness, the earthiness of what nature is, like the reality of nature.
Right.
And I think you bring that home very well, and from a personal level that people can relate to, and through all your books. I'm just saying, because now you got three of these, the Lost
Right.
Angels,
Right.
and you've got your novels, three novels, and other books and stories, right? So I just, from reading so much of your work, I feel like no matter what, I talked about the female side of things, the female, you females out there, but um there's a understanding of how real nature is, rough,
Right.
but the tender and the beauty, like you understand those, how beautiful it
Contrast.
is how rough it is. And I think you give people a very healthy dose of appreciation, and hopefully I want people to get that from your books more. I mean, but I'm like a total junkie like you on this. So but I really hope people get that adrenaline from it, because you definitely have the adrenaline junkie too, and the appreciation of nature, and then go out and experience it, but also understand the appreciation and respect like you would have in your own home, hopefully. You know what I mean? Like people understand that this is
Yeah.
our home, nature is our home.
Right. Well, in the last parting thought of my book, the little page or two about the fact that nature can be our salvation, there are many civilized ways to have this kind of experience. In Japan, they do what they call forest bathing, which
Mm.
is a very civilized way to get into nature. And they go out with a guide and they lay on the ground and absorb the energy of the trees and the earth and so on. And, you know, uh, you, I think one of the things that the pandemic did was force people to go slower. Maybe they couldn't go on the skiing trip that they would normally take. So they were forced to walk slowly in their own habitat, in their, own local meadows and parks and so on. And
Mm.
I've listened to a lot of travel writers saying this, that
Mm.
when they couldn't get out into the great wild, that they were in the local nature around them, and walking slower brought them closer, gave them sustenance, gave them strength and
Mm,
solace. Those things that we find in nature. You don't have to go to Patagonia to experience that. And I think that
yeah,
the internet and all the connectivity that we enjoy is a good thing, but that a lot of people are too plugged into and they what they've done is kind of jangled their nerves in this process.
agreed,
You
agreed.
know, and so
Yeah,
I think it's just healthy to get out once in a while and just totally unplug. Don't
take a
take your
walk.
phone with you, don't take your phone. I mean, okay, just turn it off if you feel you need to take it for
Yeah,
safety.
or use it for iNaturalist or something. So you can do public, the citizen scientist. Like, I think that's such a great app that they have. Seek is the app, but it's iNaturalist. So you can identify the flowers and the plants that
Yeah,
you're seeing and the bugs
yeah,
and stuff and identify.
that's good.
And through that for kids, I know we've done some interviews with, rangers and all of that over the years, number of them. And I kept going like, oh, the phone, anti-phone. And they're saying, no, we're not going to get away from it. How we do it now is get the kids to use these apps to look at the bugs and identify and then learn. They feel like
And
they've really
embrace
found
it. Well,
something.
that is a
Yeah.
nice thing. That is a nice thing. I haven't done that. I come home after a walk.
Yeah.
I might, and I read my flower book, or I try to identify the
Mm-hmm.
birds that I've seen and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I usually I take my binos with me because I like to, if I see a critter or a
Yeah.
bird or whatever, I like to see them a little closer. And of course, you'll be walking slower. I mean, I'm older now. I'm walking slower through life. I still love adventure travel, and I'm really looking forward to the trip that I'm going to be taking in Southeast Asia, which won't be, a rough adventure, but it will be an adventure. It'll be an exploration. I mean, we'll be going up the Mekong River for a while and
Nice.
Hunong Bay out in the gorgeous, in Vietnam, and they have these huge caves that are really bizarre and fascinating. Vietnam really intrigues me because, as a child of the 60s, it was the war, and that's all I
Mm-hmm.
saw, and Agent Orange and all of that. And but the fact is, the country is supposed, I'm told, is really quite beautiful,
A
and
lot of
that it's
people that
recovered,
served in the
and it's
war didn't want to
recovered.
come home from Vietnam. They
Ah,
they fought there, but they
yeah.
fell in love with the tropical and the people. And I just finished an interview with a travel writer who just been on the Pondon river cruise on there. And she just said, and even going to the killing fields, she went to the killing fields and she
I'll
didn't
be
want to
there.
because she's been there. She
Yeah,
did Auschwitz and she's like, I don't need to know the destruction, but as a writer, I feel I have to go. And then she was like, oh, I'm so glad I went to see the
yeah.
resiliency of people and what they've done and to move forward, but also keep the past alive, which is it's a balance, and our country is going through this right now. And that's the thing with travel writing. It's so hard because sometimes it's interesting what you were saying about not like taking the phone too much and even a camera. There's moments like I mean, I've seen bald eagles literally at my feet and didn't even move to take a photo because I'm like, it's a damn bald eagle right there. Look at this,
Yeah, because
and then I'm like,
you don't want to disturb the moment, and that's a true thing that with
mm-hmm,
being a travel writer, I'm a much better writer than I am photographer because I don't want to stop the moment. I don't want to step back from whatever's happening, to blah, blah, blah. I mean, photography is a whole art form that I feel interrupts the experience oft times.
mm,
I have to take some pictures, but I'm not constantly taking pictures. And oftentimes I will meet someone on the trip who is a photographer,
mm.
and who loves doing that. So I make friends
That's
with
their
them.
journey. That's
Yeah,
their
I
way.
make
Yeah.
friends
And
with
then she's
them.
like, hey, can you send me a photo? Right. But that's the thing. It's everyone's going through their own way, right? For what their craft is. Your craft is a writer, a photographer is a photographer. Nowadays it's all different. Everybody's merging. And if you have a phone, apparently you're a photographer. No, you're not. Just saying that really quite broadly
Actually,
because it
I
actually
think
it's
the
true.
phone is really a valuable tool though,
Mhm,
because the thing about the phone, I mean, the phone really does take great pictures, but I carry both. I carry a camera and
mm,
a camera, camera with a bigger zoom and all of that, and the phone, because the phone is so shareable and so easy and immediate.
mhm.
But I think with my camera, I have a viewfinder that I can look into and frame my shot, a little bit. So I think they're both valuable. I do carry
Mhm.
both, but I don't carry the huge, like people who get pictures of birds are carrying enormous
Oh,
zoom
the
lenses in,
giant,
right?
yeah. We have a
Forget it,
different name for that
forget
lens,
it.
but I'll behave myself. I'll behave myself right now with that lens. You see them coming, and it's like the war over the birds. But those lenses are good because then people shouldn't be getting that close to the animals. So I really appreciate
Yeah,
that.
you
For me,
can't.
I personally want the landscape. I want the landscape because to me, without the landscape, the bird doesn't survive. So I always want to show the landscape. But now it's getting harder and harder to photograph landscape that doesn't have oil derricks in it, phone lines. It's hard to not record sounds of animals now without an airplane going over. You can hear a car in the
Mhm,
distance. I don't care
mhm.
what park you go to, unless you're way out in the wilderness, you will still hear a plane go over and ruin the sound.
True enough.
So it's really important to get out now and experience it and also stand up to protect these places. I mean, I was talking about this on an interview recently, and I went out to film some pelicans in a pond, and then you lift up your gaze and there's an oil derrick right there. What am I supposed to photograph? What do I do with all this footage of this
Well,
kind of
I
thing?
have to say, one of the things I loved about Australia, and you see me in that picture there, and is that it is immense and it's lonesome.
Yeah, I see. I think that's
You
important.
know, it's vast, and there aren't a lot of people in the outback. I mean, of course, the cities are the cities, but there's huge, vast territories that are unpopulated,
Mm,
with just very small towns. And so this area here, we had an Aboriginal man gave us was taking us in this region. So it was a very authentic kind of experience, which I really appreciated and
mm.
enjoyed.
Getting to the places where you can have no pollution of sound or
Right.
human, it's hard to do, and I think we need to do more of that. I just say we got to try.
You're reminding me of my experience when I was in Australia by Uluru,
Mm.
Ayers
I'm
Rock.
glad you're saying that.
Yeah, I can almost say it. Uh, there was a light demonstration exhibit there by a man who had put out, thousands and thousands of lights in a display, and I forget his name, but there's another one. He's got another one up in Paso Robles here in California. But
Oh,
anyhow,
I know what you mean. The fields of flowers that are
yeah,
lit
the
up.
field of light, and the
Yeah.
man, and so you go there at night. So we had our hotel was in the middle of nowhere, and you took a bus to this exhibit, and you had paths through these lights, and I got into the center of that, and I sat there by myself, and just the design of the lights, and you looked up, and the thing about Australia, it was just so immense, and the stars, were in this. I felt like I was in this void. I felt like I was on a spaceship. I felt that I was the center of the universe.
That's
I had
cool.
all these things going on. It was such an experience because it was like so much nothingness, kind of space feeling. The volume of the space, I guess, is what just kind of blew my mind.
That's awesome though.
Yeah,
But that's awesome. That's
it
awesome to
was. It
do.
was a really great experience. So
That's cool. The desert does that too,
yes,
going
the
out to
desert
desert
does that.
areas.
The
And once
desert.
you have it, it kind of gets in you. And that's been interesting recently with all our travels, coming from the desert area and then going back east. And then you're in forest all the time, which I love forests. But I was like, this is different. Like I'm used to the sun being up at 4 in the morning. What's going on? This like where you're supposed to have the sun earlier than everybody else. What is going on? Where's my sun? You know, and so it's a very different thing. And I think that's the joy of travel. I mean, even Louisiana going out and filming in a forest area, I'd be like, oh, we need to be there 4 or 5. I'm so used to we need to be there at 4 or 5 in the morning. And they're like, no, you don't. y'all don't need to do that. I'm like, oh, yes, we do. Well, I get there. You can't photograph. It's so humid. I mean, you're dripping. The camera's not taking anything.
Wow.
The humidity, you're good luck with that. Good luck.
Wow.
Go ahead. There's other
You
professional
two, you
photographers that
two
know how to
have
do that.
traveled. You two have
Yeah,
traveled more than I have, by the way. I think
I don't know. I
you guys
think
are
it's all relative.
nonstop.
it, it's it's just interesting to me, because every place is different. But at the end of the day, when you meet people, we all do put our clothes on in some fashion, same way. We all kind of have this same feeling of caring for our loved ones, our children, or I don't have kids.
Family.
Thank
Yeah.
goodness.
And
But
that,
no offense
yes,
to people who do. You know
that's
what I
right.
mean? But it's like this caring. This you care, and I just because I don't have kids doesn't mean I don't care about the next generation. That's part of why I don't have kids, you know?
Right. Well, we won't go
Yeah.
into that one, but
No,
yes, I
but you
agree.
know what I mean?
But
You care.
here's the
You
thing,
care.
as a writer, of course I do. As a writer, your goal is to tap into those universal connections and emotions. And if you can do that,
Yeah.
that's the connect, that's a successful writer if you can do that, because we
Well, you
are
got
all
me
the
all
same.
riled up.
We are all the same. We're all the same. We all
Hmm.
need the same things, love and encouragement. And,
Hmm.
I think that if you can tap into those feelings that we all have,
Hmm.
you're a success. You're a
I
success.
love it.
I try.
I love it. Well, you keep writing and each gets better and just you soak in and soak in. And I think what's great, each book of the Lost Angel books you can read on its own, right? Which is
Yes.
great. But I want to kind of revisit and go backwards now. You know what I mean? I feel like going from this one, the third one, Unleashed, and then go backwards.
Well,
And
I hope so,
you
because
know what I
I
mean?
wasn't, yes, I wasn't planning, and when I wrote the books, I wasn't thinking series, but then I realized it is a series. And the Lost Angel Walkabout is my most meaningful journeys and adventures between like 2000 and 2010. But I did a lot of traveling at that time, and I think some of my best
Mm-hmm,
stories are in that book. And then
mm-hmm,
Lost Angel in Paradise, I live in California. I love the coast, and I wanted to share that, with people. So
mm-hmm.
I wrote that kind of like as my little gift to people who love California or come to California. And then this last one really was kind of a wrap up. And I thought, these books go together. They really are a travel venture series. And I don't know that this one is my last one, but I kind of felt like I said what I needed to say in this book,
Mm. That's
So
always important,
we'll
no
see.
matter what. Now, are you going to do book clubs? Like, are you going to go on a book tour? What's
I
happening with
love to
that?
do book clubs. I love to do book clubs, Zoom book clubs. I have PowerPoint presentations for my books. I love to do book clubs, and I love virtual events. This May 10th, I'm giving a talk here in the canyon, Topanga Canyon, where I live, about Embrace of the Wild, which is Isabella Bird's story. And I haven't really gotten any talks going with this book yet. I've just published it and I'm just getting started on that. But yeah, no, I love book clubs or women's groups, all of those kinds of people. And I can do it all over the world, literally,
Hmm.
with the
That's what I love
internet.
because your books are international and
Yeah,
travel too. You
I
know,
mean, and so yeah,
I
please
think
let me
people
know
also from the different countries that you've been in also want to hear what people have to say about their country
about
and
their
your
country.
experience.
Right.
Hmm. About your
Well,
experience.
remember I was in the BBC documentary
Hmm.
Trailblazer, which the English people came here to our country and did kind of I won't say it's a spoof, but it's an entertaining take on our country, their journey through
Hey,
Colorado
anything
and
England, England,
Isabella's footprint.
England
It's
always does something entertaining as far
yeah,
as I'm
it's really
concerned.
fun. It's really fun and funny. So far, it's only aired there, but I talked to the lady this week, and she said that they're hoping that it will air here in this country, which would be fabulous. I'd
Oh, I
really
hope
have
so.
fun with that.
Or maybe we'll get it on BritBox, or something
It's
like that.
not on BritBox. I am on BritBox.
I love
Not on there.
BritBox.
It was on two other places over there. She sent me the episode, but I can't share them, she said. Well,
Linda,
I can't
Linda.
because unless it comes
Yeah.
here.
It'll
So
come, eventually it all does circulate. It does. And, maybe it ends up on Hulu or, BritBox down the road. Come
well,
on, BritBox rocks. I love BritBox.
yeah, I do too. I do too. I have
Yeah.
my 4 minutes of, they sent me the episode that I'm in, and I have my 4 minutes of fame clip that I
Oh,
have, but that I can't share. I'm waiting to see if it's going to come out here.
she's like, please,
So
please let me have it. Yeah,
yeah,
let me
really,
do
let
it.
me have my 4 minutes of fame, please.
Right, your BBC fame. That's awesome. That's awesome, though. But listen, it's always great to catch up with you. And I'm so glad Nancy and I both are just always enjoy your adventures. And I think as
Uh,
travel women, we enjoy that too, because it is a pioneering spirit, but really it inspires people to go out there and do it themselves, but to do it also in a way with open eyes, open heart, and roll with the punches, right? Travel is not easy. And honestly, if everything goes easily as planned, it's not a good trip.
well, the dirty little secret of travel writing is that something bad has to
I
happen to
know.
make
And
it a
if it's
good
going
story.
easy, don't you
Yeah,
start to get uneasy when things are going easy and according to plan, you start to go, when are we going to break down? When's the shoe going to drop? What's going to happen? And then you start to get paranoid over, like, why is it so easy? And then,
well, I have to confess, Elisa, that I do go with overseas adventure travel most of the time when they're wonderful guides. I go with guides.
yeah, that's
On river
always
trips,
good
I
to
go
have.
with guides, and that's such a luxury. And like I say, I am an outdoors person, but I love the luxury of having a guide and not having to worry about all those
Oh, we don't want to
details.
sleep on rocks anymore. We're done with that. We did that earlier. Like
Yeah,
everybody else can
which
sleep on their, in their sleeping bag on the rocks on the side of the river. I'm not doing it anymore.
Well, which
I'm
isn't to
tired.
say that bad things can't happen, because speaking of tents, I had one, I was up in the high Sierras and it rained, and I woke up and there was my tent was floating.
Oh
Like
no.
there was like 6 inches of water under my tent, and I had to crawl out and grab all my stuff and move my whole tent. But stuff happens, but you deal
Yeah.
with it.
But that's part of the stories. Like when we tell stories of travel, when does it not include something crazy like that happening?
True enough. True enough. Well,
You
don't
know?
let it stop you from getting out there. That's
No,
all I
you're
can
supposed
say.
to. That's what I'm saying. It's embrace it. And when you read stories like what Linda shares, I want people out and to understand that you learn so much about yourself in going out and travel. I don't know anything else that will get you to know about yourself more than travel.
This is true. This is
True.
true. Well, I hope
Yep.
people will read my book, and if they do, they can contact me, and I'm happy to do book clubs and whatever.
Awesome. Awesome. Everyone, again, the book is Lost Angel Unleashed, Stories from the Heart. And this is the third book in the series. For all, go to lindaballouauthor.com. That's the best place, right, Linda, for everyone to connect with you?
To connect with me, yes. I haven't got Unleashed up on that page yet, though. But of course, it's on Amazon and all
Those
the other
places.
places you can buy books.
And she's on YouTube. She's on Instagram. She's
Yeah,
on everything.
yeah, all that
Facebook.
good stuff.
Yep. Always good to
All
catch
right,
up.
thanks,
Thanks so much,
Lisa.
Linda. Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio's Lost Angel Travel Adventure Show with Linda Ballou, travel writer and author. Keep up with her at lindaballouauthor.com and lostangeladventures.com. You can also keep up with Big Blend Radio at bigblendradio.com. Now, happy traveling.